welcome to another episode of ohmTown Daily News Show. How are you all? My name is Mayor Watt. I run that site. Go over to ohmTown.com, become a citizen. Like at the beginning of all of these episodes, I say what ohmTown is. ohmTown is a news aggregator, but it's also wanting to be a social network. I'm trying to get people to go over there and sign up, be a citizen, make comments, vote things up and down, although right now the voting system is offline. But there are hundreds of thousands of article headlines and little snippets that my aggregator reaches out and grabs for me. The entirety of the site is bound by the idea that I consume so much information that I needed something to organize it in something that I could understand and manage. And, well, that's what ohmTown is. And I figured if I like it, maybe there are others. And so ohmTown aggregates it into 6 main categories: create, news, education, entertainment, social, and technology. And from there, it aggregates it into 50 channels. And now I want to bring those channels to Twitch. And then after Twitch has their way with them, for 14 days it's stored. But I also post them over after 24 hours over to YouTube and to a podcast. That said, it's a pretty broad spectrum of topics, and I give a little bit of news and context from this aggregation. About 20 articles each episode. Takes about an hour. Sometimes I run long. If anybody starts chatting in the chat and I get pulled into it, then I will probably run longer. But I post the links in chat. You can click those links, go over to ohmTown, either during, after, or whenever you want, and you'll get sent over to ohmTown. And there you can register, become a citizen, like I said at the beginning of this. So now that I'm talking about the same thing twice, I'm going to continue on with this. So the beginning of ohmTown is just the front page of ohmTown is nothing but a series of links to articles within ohmTown. And I'm now at 250,000 headlines. And I don't go into great detail on the site. And even during the show, I don't go into great detail. I give some context from my perspective, my areas of expertise, center around technology, business, and society. And I talk about these headlines in that framework. Not to mention just personal experience, professional experience, but my academic experience is in business, technology, and society. With that in mind, let's go on with the show. The very first article is over here in the continuity report, and it's about something called Gremlins: Secrets of the Mogwai, to world premiere at Annecy, I guess, Animation Festival. I haven't heard of this before, but that's not necessarily a big deal. It says HBO Max's Gremlins: Secrets of the Mogwai is set for a world premiere at the Annecy International Animation Film Festival on June 13th. Produced by Amblin Television in association with Warner Brothers Animation, the highest awaited animated prequel series to the now classic film franchise will see its first episode. So let's click that link and take you over to Variety. And John Hopewell is the author of this. And it has like an animated Mogwai. I don't know what the name is of that particular Mogwai. I don't want to make any assumption. But it is not a gremlin, which is arguably, they're from the same thing. But if you feed them after midnight or get them wet, Well, if you get them wet, they multiply, but if you feed them after midnight, they turn into gremlins. But every day is after midnight of the previous day, so I'm not quite sure. There's a real disconnection there. And, that's part of the continuity report. So this actually was in the continuity report, which is going to be a channel about movies and those internal inconsistencies that kind of pull you away from the plot and pull you when you start chuckling about things. And since basically I'm I find these things regularly, particularly there's never anything actually in those cups that people are swinging around when they're walking around on the set. They're just swinging them around like it's a baseball bat. And then they take a sip from it as if I'm supposed to believe that there's something in it. And doggone it, that's just not right. They need to put at least water in it. Drink some water. Oh, I know it's really tough that you have to swallow the water before you can do your acting. But the writers, you got to plan it. You got to make it real. You make me feel the scene. And if there's no coffee in that cup, I'm just not feeling it. The whole thing just falls apart like House of Cards. Anyway. So Gremlins is coming to an animation festival, and soon to HBO Max, I guess. I haven't seen it yet. It's on June 13th at the animation festival, and it's going to be cool. I dig animation, so I hope it's going to be pretty neat. It says a period piece set in 1920 Shanghai. It reveals how a 10-year-old Sam Wing, who becomes the future shop owner Mr. Wing in the 1984 movie, met the young Mogwai called Gizmo. So it is going to be Gizmo. Okay. I didn't want to make any assumptions and then set everybody up for disappointment when it isn't Gizmo, but I guess Gizmo is going to be the premier Mogwai in this animation. Well, that'll be neat. Why it's on HBO Max, I'll never really know, but Secrets of the Mogwai. So this next article is over in the continuity report, and it's really because of a video, I believe. Not necessarily just the album, but Rosalia moves to the head of the class with the dazzling Motomami, I guess. I guess that's pronounced it. I'm probably pronouncing it incorrectly. Album review. Barcelona-born singer Rosalia. Not Rosalia. It's Rosalia, based on the SNL episode that she did her music in. I think it was this last weekend. Seemed to progress ahead of her own albums. While her debut was essentially the street traditional flamenco she spent years learning, and the second saw her fusing that style with more contemporary sounds. Her guest appearances with artists ranging from J Balvin, Ozuna, and Bad Bunny to The Weeknd, Billie Eilish, and then the article is just snipped. So you're going to have to go and visit the source to see more about this, and that's kind of one of the points of this whole thing. And so this is an article over at Variety written by Jem Oswald, and it continues with Billie Eilish and Travis Scott, and her recent singles have seen her fully embracing innovative, envelope-pushing sounds ranging from reggaeton to hip hop to pop. So I watched her on SNL, and I thought it was actually great music. She has a great voice, and stage presence is amazing. You kind of get sucked into it, even though it wasn't like dramatic or bombastic. It wasn't loud and in your face or flashy or anything like that. But you stuck around to listen to the whole song, so it's pretty neat. But that was the first I had heard of them, so go and check this out. Go and read the rest of this article, because you'll find some more interesting articles in here. It's interesting, though, because it says, and what a flow it is, swinging from bangers like Chicken Teriyaki to Bizcochito, which is a cheerleader anthem slightly reminiscent of Gwen Stefani's Hollaback Girl. Okay. Well, I think I'll probably end up having to do A little bit more research into Rosalia. I love good voices, and I not necessarily appreciate every song, but I love good music, and I know what I like. So if I hear it, I'll add it to my playlist. The next article is in The Word in Tech. And you know what I didn't do? I didn't throw the link for the last article in chat. And those of you who are in the podcast, that are downloading the podcast, we're actually pretty behind in posting the daily news, which is this show. And sorry about that if you are downloading it too. I'm actually doing all of the work to get all 76 now. Yeah, 76 back episodes published into the podcast, because I don't want to miss any day. And so it's taking a little bit of time. So I should have 30 more done by the weekend, and hopefully we'll be caught up by midweek if everything goes as planned. So the title of this one is The Vibe Shift in Silicon Valley. It says, last month, Allison P. Davis wrote a widely read article in New York titled A Vibe Shift is Coming. In it, she posited that the third year of our pandemic would reveal an obvious and perhaps wrenching evolution of the culture. A vibe shift, she wrote, is a relatively simple idea. In the culture, sometimes things change, and a once dominant social wavelength starts to feel dated. So what is this shift? This is an article over at The Verge written by Casey Newton. Again, I don't read the entire article or even display it. The title here also says notes on where tech power is moving in the Biden years. Yeah, I don't really think Biden has much to do with this. But in this article, they write, I've been thinking about Davis's piece more or less ever since. In particular, I've been working on how to apply it to my chosen field, tech journalism, which is driven as much by social wavelengths as any other part of culture. For some time, I'd been attempting to work out which stories felt relevant for 2022 that may not have in, say, 2020. Today, I want to tell you what I've come up with. And so they get into some detail about their perspective. Trump era vibe. Facebook is the center. Facebook grew its user base by the billions during the Trump era. Well, I mean, when there is a place for technically incorrect, morally incorrect, ethically incorrect statements and outrage, yeah, I guess it will grow by billions. Biden era vibe, TikTok is the center. Yeah, that's because people are being bombarded by news and information that's longer form. That's why I kind of put all of this together too. So you can get a small snippet. It's an hour, but 20 articles, and then you can go over to the website if you're so motivated. So I can see why TikTok would rise. You can consume a whole lot of social perspective, but not necessarily factual data. And really, people are about pithy snippets than long form information. Yeah, well, and that's pretty true, I'd say. I would have to go and find research, but I don't think anybody has done research on that. Trump era vibe, information is spreading too quickly. I don't think information is spreading quickly enough. The problem is that it's incorrect information. So they even say it in the first line. This genre of reporting focused on the rapid spread of misinformation, disinformation, hate speech, and other arms. It was the premise on the idea that Facebook in particular, but also Twitter and YouTube, well, there were social repercussions on Twitter and YouTube, particularly Twitter, and Twitter has been, in my estimation, mostly on the right side of this. It's the same thing when people start screaming about cancel culture. No, it isn't. There is no such thing as cancel culture in the sense that, I mean, it exists, but this idea that it's something that is disproportionate from something else is kind of a weird take, at least for me, because really, if you are surrounded by people that are saying like just bananas things, right? Like, I wear my underwear on the outside of my head, and not in my pants. You're not going to hang out with that person unless you are kind of hip to that. But my point is, when people say absurd things, nobody wants to enable that. Nobody wants to be around that. Nobody, and by absurd, I mean just banana harmful things to society, to each other, to whatever. Marginalizing people simply because of their place of origin and whatever. I mean, even socioeconomic status became a thing. And so my point about that little tirade, I guess, is society responds and shuts it down. And it's being perceived as cancel culture, but it's really about stuffing lies, deceit, misinformation, disinformation, hate, vitriol, etc. back under the rock that it used to be under. But for the internet, which is great at giving everybody a voice, including those that aren't represented, it also gave a voice to this misinformation, disinformation, the marginalizing of science, of education, of so many things. It's weird. And I feel like I've been saying that a lot since 2021, and kind of trending up in, wow, it's gotten weird. Anyway, this article goes into more, and I would suggest you go over to The Verge and read this article. Obviously, the link is in chat, and it'll be in the description when it gets posted to YouTube and to Apple Podcasts. But it's an article titled "The Vibe Shift in Silicon Valley," and it's written by Casey Newton. I suppose I would say that that vibe shift is not just in Silicon Valley, but let's keep going. The next article is in the Mobile channel, and yes, it has to do with Ukraine. I'm sure some people are kind of getting tired of hearing about it, but you know what? It's happening, and so I will continue to talk about it. And it's important that it doesn't get forgotten, swept under the rug, and I won't stop doing it just for a few. This is, I'm not sure if I'm pronouncing it right. Let me start at the title. So, inside the OSINT operation, and an open source intelligence operation to get foreign students out of Ukraine. So, the name I think is pronounced Chimee, Chimee. A 29-year-old Nigerian student distinctly remembers a painting flying off his dormitory wall and smashing to the ground as explosions rang in the distance. Just 5 months ago, he had left Nigeria to finish his master's degree in Sumy, a city in eastern Ukraine. Now one of the focal points of the Russian invasion, friends and family spammed his phone with messages telling him to leave Ukraine, but fighting had already begun, and the railway tracks around the city had been damaged. Still, a few days later, Chimee, I think his name is, or their name is, and it is a he. Chimee had once again packed his most important belongings into a suitcase and set his Google Maps in the direction of a new country. So a ragtag group of hackers and open source intelligence professionals is using everything from open flight data to Google Maps to evacuate foreign students from Ukraine. This is an article by Gabriel Geiger, and I'm not sure hold on, let me mouse over this and see if that says something. So a contributor, no, they're both contributors. So Sebastian Skov Anderson is also an author of this article. And they always have a representative photograph. But yeah, there's a lot of information. It's what I tell people pretty much every day. You have the world's knowledge at your fingertips if you have technology in your hand. So if you have a phone, a smartphone of some kind, and nowadays a lot of people have smartphones, you have a multi-tool. It's kind of like, your skeleton knife, or looks like this, right? Now, hold on a second. I'll just hold mine up, right? So this is a Leatherman, right? It has all kinds of tools in it, everything from a pair of pliers to nail file. It's kind of like a Swiss Army knife, but it's more industrial and a little bit more bulky, depending on which Swiss Army knife you get. But the internet and a cell phone can do wonders. The only problem is if the technology has been disabled. So if you don't have cell towers, it doesn't matter how many satellites are floating around, your cell phone is not going to function. So people have the ability to use their more terrestrial computers that are connected to the internet to perform things like open source intelligence, basically using public information to help each other out. It's used in crises around the world. And it's a great thing. And if you are interested in cybersecurity or technology, then go do some investigating into what OSINT is, because there are a lot of public tools out there that are free. And one of them is Kali, K-A-L-I, which is basically an industry standard in cybersecurity, information intelligence gathering. But there are a bunch of others out there. Don't let just my particular reference stop you. Just do a search for OSINT. Oh, and I'm standing at my desk today. So I might kind of change legs and pace. So I hope it's not distracting and everybody can hear me okay. So I'm not going to read the entirety of the article, but just know that it says Jimmy came into contact with Kubeka, another person, and the others on March 5th after the other students had begun posting about their situation on social media. So again, social media comes seemingly to the rescue, and it's these times where I'm conflicted between the benefit that social networks provide and some of the more manipulative things that are perpetuated on its users. Again, I can talk about this in greater detail if you are oh so motivated. Just come on back to twitch.tv/ohmTown any day, 6 o'clock. I'll stay after and talk to you. And of course, we can always chat at ohmTown.com or at Twitter, because I'm on Twitter too. But let's continue on. The next article is in the Marble channel. And it may not be cute, but here's why the humble yabby deserves your love. I've no idea what a yabby is. But it grabbed my attention, so I wanted to click on it. But like all of these articles, I don't read the articles before I do my news. I add my particular context to these, my perspective as well. So I've never heard of a yabby. For children growing up in rural areas, going yabbying in farm dams is a rite of passage. The common yabby, Cherax destructor, is the most widely distributed Australian crayfish, inhabiting rivers and wetlands across Southeast Australia. Yeah, I can't imagine. You know, it's almost a meme that pretty much everything in Australia wants to kill you, right? Like every animal out there. I saw somebody, what was it? They were joking about no, you don't see kangaroos hopping across the street in Australia all the time. And then somebody posted a picture or a video of kangaroos hopping across the street. And then there was something else, and it just came charging at somebody that was doing something in front of their truck. There's all kinds of stuff out there. Awesome place. I haven't been there. I want to go. But going after crayfish, just, oh my gosh. It's like catfish noodling or whatever it's called. Yeah, I think it's called catfish noodling. You basically stick your hand inside a catfish by digging around under rocks. I'd be worried about whatever else is going to bite onto me. But here we go. Let's go over to the source. This is a phys.org article. And it says, it may, like I said at the beginning of this, it may not be cute, but here's why the humble yabby deserves your love. It's an article on phys.org written by Paul McInerney and Gavin Reese from The Conservation. And they have a picture of the yabby, the Cherax destructor. Sounds like something from Ghostbusters. But it's referred to as the common yabby. And although the humble yabby is not as cute and cuddly as some better known Australian icons, from an ecosystem perspective, we argue that it may be more important. And these are the researchers who looked into this. And frankly, I mean, it looks like any other crayfish. So, I mean, from a non-expert perspective, I mean, it looks like a smaller lobster or whatever you want to call it. It's a shellfish. I don't know if it's good eating or not, but I guess there are experts out there that might have been eating it. Yabbies are a staple food for platypus. Oh, interesting. Many water bird species and fish such as Murray cod and golden perch, and yabbies' diet is largely made up of algae, detritus, which is dead organic material, and small animals. This means they link energy from the very bottom of the food chain to apex predators at the top. And yet little is known how their diets influence their growth and alter their quality as a food source. So I guess they go into greater detail about it, and they're really tiny, apparently. I don't know how big these things get, but there's a person holding one, and it doesn't look much bigger than the length of a grown person's thumb. You know, all like from here to here, that kind of a size. You know, I need a banana for scale, I suppose. Anyway, go over to phys.org, read this article. It may not be cute, but here's why the humble yabby deserves your love. Written by Paul McInerney and Gavin Reese. Looks like it's part of the food chain, and that's why you should go and hug your yabby. The next article is in the Mobile channel, and it's Scientists Uncover Important Clue in Mysterious Radio Signals from Space. It could be species C10 from Star Trek Discovery. I'm not sure. There might be the DMA out there scavenging resources. Maybe that's what's going on. Scientists have used the biggest single dish radio telescope on Earth to probe the unknown origins of radio signals from space that repeat sometimes in clockwork patterns, reports a new study. The observations could help distinguish between the hypothetical sources of these exotic signals known as fast radio bursts, FRBs, based on the magnetic patterns imprinted in their light. First discovered in 2007, FRBs are unidentified radio pulses that flash brightly, for mere milliseconds, hinting that they are generated by energetic cosmic events. The bursts typically originate from beyond the Milky Way. Let's go over to the source. This is an article over at vice.com. Did I say who the other Vice article was? Yeah, I did. So a key signature in the light of fast radio bursts could help identify the sources of these enigmatic flashes from deep space. It's an article written by Becky Ferreira. Oh, okay. So this is much like the Arecibo. So they're talking about a dish that's in China that is massive, and it's built almost exactly like Arecibo, but it doesn't have a central, I guess, equipment cluster in the center of it, held up above it by wires. I don't think. It must, because that's really the only way that you can get telemetry from a satellite dish like this. Well, or a radio telescope, pardon me. Well, anyway, it says the observations could help distinguish between hypothetical sources of these exotic signals, known as FRBs, based on their magnetic patterns imprinted in their light. And what else here? Let's see. The team suggests that the light that is heavily twisted by the magnetic fields likely indicates sources with messy magnetic environments associated with the deaths of young stars, such as the fallout of a recent supernova, or windy nebulas that surround dead stars called pulsars. So if they operate like clockwork, then it could be just coming straight from something like a pulsar, which basically just emits high energy out of a more concentrated point and not in all directions like the sun. The team directly observed 5 repeaters with 2 telescopes and used existing studies to probe the remaining 16. Observations were captured by the Robert C. Byrd Green Bank Telescope in West Virginia and the 500-meter Aperture Spherical Radio Telescope, or FAST, in the Pingtang County in China, measuring 1,640 feet in diameter. It's the largest single dish radio telescope on Earth. And if you go over to the Vice article, again, if you do a search for scientists uncover important clue in mysterious radio signals from space, or even a portion of that, you will find this picture, and it's just a beast. The thing is just huge, and it looks almost identical to Arecibo, except that Arecibo imploded when they I guess the research for why the Arecibo collapsed was because maintenance had been foregone for a while in certain places, and the telemetry array that was on cables was beyond its strength, coupled with the pillars were too weak to hold all of that mass, and it got too close to its tolerance, and down it goes. So a mainstay of me growing up, poof, because advances in technology didn't replace or augment what was in there stability wise. But let's continue on. This is another out of this world article. This is in the Mobile channel. M87 data from Event Horizon Telescope rules out the likelihood of axion particles in a specific mass range. When I read that title and I read the little snippet, I instantly thought of Star Trek, and I had just watched Star Trek Discovery last night. If you're interested in that, go and watch that too. But it says a team of researchers affiliated with multiple institutions in China and 2 in Germany has found that data from the Event Horizon Telescope, the EHT, rules out the likelihood of axion particles in a specific mass range around the black hole M87 in their paper published in the journal Nature Astronomy. The group describes their analysis of data recently obtained from the EHT and what it showed about time-varying changes in the polarization's direction. That's a whole lot of things I understand individually, but not necessarily all together. So this is an article written by Bob Yurka for phys.org. And axions were first proposed back in the 1970s to explain why there's so little antimatter in the universe. I don't even know how they detect antimatter, but apparently they can. Scientists can. The particles are also theorized to be part of dark matter, and that's the stuff that fills up what seemingly is missing from what we can observe. Because for all intents, there is something missing in the universe when we scan it, and it's been surmised as being dark matter. Unfortunately, no one has been able to prove they exist. Instead, physicists continue to look for circumstantial evidence of their existence. In this new effort, the researchers have looked into another theoretical idea, one that suggests axions should build up in clouds around black holes. Scientists had not been able to test this theory until recently because they'd not had images made of the polarized light emitted from a black hole. That changed last year when the EHT captured images of the black hole M87 and released them for use by other researchers. Yay! Research exchange for the betterment of the human race. Imagine that. If only we all just got along, right? Yeah, one can dream. But I'm going to continue on to the next article. You can go and take a look at each of these directly. This article is in the Tabletop Knights channel. It's about Knights of the Kitchen Table is the phrase that I use, dedicated to tabletop gaming, but not of the adult kind. So there's like gambling and things like that, and that's not what Tabletop Knights is all about. This says Triangle Strategy sells almost 800,000 units worldwide, over 200,000 in Japan and Asian regions. And that's all that is in this snippet. And so it kind of piqued my curiosity, and I've not gone over to the site to look at it. So this is an article over at rpgsite.net, written by Adam Vitale and Kite Stenbuck. It says Square Enix Tomoyo Asano has announced that Triangle Strategy has sold over 200,000 copies in Japan and Asia and almost 800,000 worldwide within the first 2 weeks after its release. And I have not seen this. So it's the announcement comes from the official Japanese Triangle Strategy Twitter account with an illustration as a commemorative illustration. And it says, to put that number in some perspective, this is what the author wrote. The most recent Team Asano project, Bravely Default 2, had reached 950,000 units sold worldwide in 6 months of sales ahead of its PC release. It now sits above 1 million since. Octopath Traveler had sold about 1 million within its launch month in 2018. So you can go over to RPG site and read more about this article, and you can click on the announcement that will take you over to the Twitter account, and maybe you can find out more about this. But it looks like it's for Nintendo, and at least right now for Nintendo, but other games, obviously many games from Square Enix, has been transitioned over to PC. This next article is in the Warcrafters channel. Itch's massive charity bundle raised over $6.3 million for Ukraine. So Itch's bundle for Ukraine, the latest in what's becoming an extremely welcome trend of massive charity bundles on the indie storefront, wrapped up today after raising $6.3 million for charities supporting the people of Ukraine. Organized by Necrosoft Games director Brandon Sheffield, the bundle for Ukraine collected just shy of 1,000 games, including, full disclosure, the authors, I believe, for a tenner in support of 2 charities working in Ukraine during Russia's ongoing invasion, the International Medical Corps and Voices of Children. So, wow, this my aggregator grabbed a lot, and I'm not sure why. I'll have to remedy that. This is an anomaly, so apologies. The article's over at PC Gamer, and it's written by Natalie Clayton. And it's the bundle for Ukraine exceeded its first million in under a day. So you can go over to the article. It says Sheffield originally gave the bundle a target of $100,000, which it crushed in less than an hour. After a day, the bundle had raised over 1.6 million. And then it reached 6.3 million by the time it ended today. Wow. Not bad. Not bad at all. So good luck, Ukraine. Use this money well. And I guess this is over, but Humble Bundle has a package as well that is being used to for donations to Ukraine. The next article is over in the Order of the Grape. Bar owners left bitter as lime prices soar, but it's not inflation that's causing it. So this says, with Cinco de Mayo on the horizon, not quite imminent, yet sure to arrive as the final wisps of green dye filter from the Chicago River. And if you've not looked at that being done, you can do a Google search or go over to YouTube and search for dyeing the Chicago River green, and you'll see how it goes down. No magic wands. A key ingredient in the margarita is experiencing the largest price hike. I merged the two words together in almost a decade. A staple not only in the world's most popular cocktail, but in classics such as the daiquiri and the gimlet. So it says, and while inflation is impacting every facet of operations right now, in case of limes, poor growing conditions and socioeconomic norms. Let's click this link. It takes us over to VinePair. I always recommend VinePair. Go over and check them out. This is the first animated image that I've seen. But it's two lime halves being connected by, it looks like gold coins. Interesting choice. Anyway, the article is written by Tim McCurdy, M-C-K-I-R-D-Y, McCurdy. And the illustration that I'm looking at and that you'll see in the YouTube video is by Danielle Grinberg. So let's see, up to 97% of the limes sold in the United States are imported from Mexico, the world's largest producer of the zesty, fragrant citrus fruit. In the last 12 months, prices have almost doubled there, from 27 pesos per kilo to 52 pesos this month, according to government data published on Tuesday. Well, thank you very much for disclosing this. Suppliers such as Baldor typically sell limes in 40-pound cases. Prices fluctuate throughout the year, but averages around $32 per case. Today, that figure hovers closer to $100. And this is why I tell you about the fact that if the raw supplier raises its rates seemingly pennies, right? It goes from 50 cents to 75 cents. It doesn't seem that much at that level, but then it goes to somebody else, they raise the rate. It goes to somebody else, it raised the rate. By the time it's in the retail store, you're talking about $5. And the cause of the inflation is the supply chain. Look all the way back to who it is that's producing the good. And I'm not talking about selling it at the store. I'm not talking about even the manufacturer. You can look and talk to the manufacturer and they're like, yeah, my costs have gone up. Okay, so let's go back to the raw material supplier. And if they're not the one that is actually grabbing the materials from wherever it is and then providing it to the next person, if it isn't the beginning of the chain, look back further, because I guarantee you those that control all of that supply, the raw material supply, is very few nowadays. It's all been acquired by extremely wealthy people and organizations. And there's a lot of cash floating around, particularly in the United States, because billions of dollars have been thrown into the economy. Trillions of dollars have been generated just here, let's save the banks. Here, let's save this, but not the common person, not the little person. And all that wealth is concentrated. And it will continue to be that way. It's a societal change that will have to take place. Or largely there's trouble on the horizon. You can't have inflation unchecked. And the people that are going to suffer the most are the people that can't afford inflation. It's just not something, and you're a sociopath if you say, well, you should have planned. That's not how you treat your neighbors. That's not how you treat people. Sorry, ended up on a soapbox when I'm talking about cases of limes. That said, though, that is what the point of this is, right? So people are raising the prices. In some case, it could be a natural disaster or just a reduction in the ultimate level of the harvest, right? That increased the cost. But until we know the accounting of it, how many actually hit that, how many 40-pound cases actually are in the industry, it could be price gouging. It could be somebody trying to take advantage, predatory pricing. But I'll end up in a conversation with people about how I'm not the one that should be the one that sets the price. You're right. That's why I'm not buying limes, because I'm not the one that set the price, and neither are you, without having to spend what appears to be 3 times what the cases used to cost, right? And we're just talking about the lowly lime at this point. Go look at prices for other stuff. Everything is much, much, much more expensive here in the States. And it pales in comparison to some things in other countries. So yeah, we are not all alone, you know. It isn't, there's no silo. There's no protection from one country to another. We are all interconnected economically, socially. We just can't see the forest for the trees. But let's keep on going. The next article. This next article is Big Tech is not shaking over fear of antitrust as companies plow ahead with billion-dollar deals. I have been watching mergers and acquisitions take place that are in the billions of dollars. And again, we have record profits. Record profits while we have inflation. Record profits while the cost of living is skyrocketing. Record profits. Yet supposedly the supply chain is dead and nobody is making any money and jobs are hobbled. And it's taking place right now, as a matter of fact, in China, where they're doing a huge shutdown because COVID is kicking off again. Let's click this link. I'm not trying to be negative or sound negative. I'm just simply stating the facts. This is how it is. This is a MarketWatch article. It's written by John Swartz. And some stocks are up, some stocks are down, mostly up. Apparently today was a pretty good day. It started out like plus 150, the stock market, the Dow. But it says, just days after Google parent Alphabet announced its intention to buy cybersecurity Mondiant for $4.5 billion, Amazon on Thursday won unconditional European Union antitrust approval for its $8.45 billion purchase of MGM. Amazon's move should ramp up competition while streaming rivals Netflix and Walt Disney basically battle it out. But as you reduce competition, you're reducing options. And when there is no competition, you basically find kind of de facto partnership, right? Well, if they're going to price it at $15.99, I'll price it at $15.99. And then when one raises the price, the other one sees that there's no uh, exiting in mass from the service, so they raise their rates, and Prime just raised their rates. So as we consolidate, competition is reduced, prices go up, service goes down. We have seen this since time immemorial. The moment that you have what ultimately ends up being dictatorial powers, you end up with a horrible customer experience and literally being told to lump it or leave. Well, we know how that goes. We know how that goes. Next up, Microsoft Corporation, which closed its $19.7 billion acquisition of Nuance in March, and waiting regulatory approval for its $68.7 billion bid for Activision Blizzard. That's another one. I mean, it's just amazing the amount of money. 20 years ago, it was maybe $1 billion. 30 years ago, it was millions, hundreds of millions of dollars. 40 years ago, it was tens of millions of dollars. The acceleration and the valuation, to me, my anecdotal, non-research proven perspective of this is that there is a ton of concentrated wealth, and it's not going to the people that are actually doing the work. They're doing it. The wealth is being concentrated. So you better, if you're not involved in that, if you're not investing, if you're not preparing for the future, I mean, you better start, because there's going to be a whole lot of people out there saying, well, you should have prepared. Not everybody has the option to prepare. They are literally growing up hand to mouth. They can't prepare. They can't save. They can't get a better education. It's too expensive. They can't even buy a car now with all of their computer chips actually installed. It is interesting times, as an advisor once said to me, which is actually a euphemism for I hope you're kind of going to get screwed by the world. It's a Chinese proverb, may you live in interesting times. At least that's what I remember it being. May you live in interesting times. And it basically is an appeal to, I hope that you have such turmoil in your life that you're basically ruined. But I'm going to continue on. Just know there is a lot of mergers and acquisitions out there, particularly in the technology sector. Even musicians are selling their catalogs for the money that is out there, because they can make more music, but getting, a quick $100 million, easy money, go and invest it. If you do it right, you'll make more money than having to worry about when the next royalty check comes. A little while ago, we heard that Pete Davidson was going to go into space on the Blue Origin ship, and apparently no. It says, according to the company, the comedian is no longer able to join its coming mission. It was unclear whether another celebrity would take his seat. This is in the Marvel channel, and that is the title. Pete Davidson no longer going to space, Blue Origin says. If it is not an episode of Chad on SNL and him maybe going to space or maybe returning from Mars, he went to Mars in his little skit. I mean, it's awesome. Him playing Chad. Anyway, this is a New York Times article, and it's written by Derek Bryson Taylor. And it says here, Pete Davidson, the Saturday Night Live comedian and actor, will no longer travel to the edge of space on the next Blue Origin space flight, the company said late Thursday. Which is kind of a bummer. I think that his take on being in space and coming back would be kind of, I don't know. He may be a star in the movie. He comes across as just being kind of chill. Obviously, I've never met him, or I don't hang out with him or anything like that. But and maybe my take is completely off target. But he seems like he would just give probably the best interview as to his experience going into space. I'll be curious what he says on Saturday Night Live, which is tomorrow for me. Anyway, go over, check out that New York Times article. Like always, I don't read the entire thing here live. The next article. Oh, I didn't post. Sorry. I'm going to go back and post that Pete Davidson article in chat. And I know you in the podcast are not, you're basically shaking your head. Why are you telling me that you're copying and pasting this stuff? I do it. Just so you know that the dead air is actually me doing a copy and paste. Why this? Red hot hedge fund manager says oil can reach $200 per barrel. This is in the stock marketeers channel. Pierre Ondrand, a commodities trader, is saying oil can reach $200 and why. So this is a MarketWatch article, and they don't seem to, they changed it a little differently. They changed the title. Oil can reach $200 per barrel, this red hot hedge fund manager says. The original URL says why this red hot hedge fund manager says oil can reach $200. They always change it over at MarketWatch for some reason. I don't know if that helps SEO or what, but it seems weird to me. And I say that a lot lately. This article over at MarketWatch is written by Steve Goldstein, by the way. And it says, he's not a permabull either, having bet that oil prices could go negative, a prediction that came to fruition in 2020. But it's incredibly bullish now, saying prices could reach $200. I do not think that it will hit $200. I suppose it's possible, but I do not see it without causing a 1970s era fuel crisis, and the economy will take a beating because of it. Although we have the technology to survive distance employment. You know, a large number of people still have to put hands on product. But many people don't have to drive anywhere and can enjoy the comfort of their home and still get stuff done. He says Russian oil, he says, won't be available to global markets for some time, even if the country can make or reach a peace deal with Ukraine. So they say, for me, it's not only about the ceasefire, but I think that the sanctions will stay on Russia until the West can feel that they can trust them and that they will not go attack another neighbor like a few months later or attack NATO countries. He told the Odd Lots podcast from Bloomberg. So I saw a picture today. I don't know if I have an article that links the picture. But there were Russian helicopters that were painted onto Germany, or something like that, in it. And if you do a search for writing on a Russian helicopter saying onto Germany or something like that, you'll find the picture. Google does a good job of supplying popular links, so you'll find it. At any rate, it says here in the article, of the 4 million barrels a day lost from Russian production, he says Gulf countries can replace 1.5 million. Western countries can tap their strategic reserves to fill the rest, but will run out after 2.5 years. At $200 per barrel, Andran said demand could fall to balance the market. And I don't think that the price should change. I don't see why it should change, particularly if it's a reserve. It is there to absorb the shock of whatever might be going on. And we've already paid for it. So why, and we have to rotate it out anyway. It devolves, it decomposes as time goes on. So get it out of there, and then when all of this settles down, we can purchase en masse to refill it, and it won't hit 120. In fact, if it drives the impetus to switch to more green, awesome. I'd love to have prices reduced so that I can put solar panels on my roof, even though a storm blew all my shingles off and I had to replace it anyways. So I got a brand new roof when I really want solar panels up there. Then I'd be off the grid. I wouldn't have to worry about this. Then I could go and get an electric car and be off the grid. And I don't think that many of the green energy solutions, renewable energy solutions, are actually defensible. So I'm quite the conundrum, right? We can talk about that more too. Come on over to ohmTown. Come on over to me here on Twitch if you're listening to this after I'm done. But let's continue on. This next article is about dinosaurs. Not really dinosaurs, but a giant whale fossil found in the Peruvian desert. Might as well be a dinosaur to me. This is in the Marble Channel. 36 million year old whale fossil found in the Peruvian desert. Paleontologists on Thursday unveiled the fossilized remains of an ancient whale that inhabited the seas 36 million years ago, found last year in a Peruvian desert. And I hear somebody that I work with whispering a mom joke in my ear. And they're not even here. Just so you know, I'm not hearing voices. I just can imagine. At any rate, let's click this link. It'll take us over to phys.org. It's an article written by Carlos Mandujano. Hopefully I'm pronouncing that correctly. I'm probably hacking it up, but Carlos, let me know if I need to pronounce it differently. The quote here is, "We have presented the new Peruvian Basilosaurus. It is the complete skull of an archaic whale that lived 36 million years ago." Paleontologist Mario Urbina, head of the team that discovered the skeleton, told AFP. Urbino said, "The Basilosaurus was found," it is a dinosaur, was found at the end of 2021 in the, oh goodness, Okukaji Desert. I know I gotta be messing up that name, in the Ica department. ICA. Man, why am I pronouncing it more like you would pronounce something Japanese? So anyway, about 350 kilometers south of Lima, the desolate landscape was a shallow sea millions of years ago, and its dunes have yielded large numbers of striking primitive sea mammal remains. Cool. So they've dubbed it the Okakaji predator. I am pronouncing it like it's Japanese, and it's not. So I guess I'm just being a village idiot today. It was about 17 meters or 55 feet long and used its massive, powerful teeth to feed on tuna, sharks, and schools of sardines, and humans, because we used to ride them across the dunes of the desert for miles. The next article is in the Daily News Show. For the greater good, California looks to restore free college. Wouldn't that be interesting? Free college. We are now moving closer to a future where California's youth can leave college and fulfill their dreams of starting a business, a family, or buying a home. So this article is over at Common Dreams. It's written by Reginald Jones Sawyer. America's student loan crisis has Washington tied in knots. Collectively, Americans owe some $1.7 trillion in student loan debt. This debt is saddling a generation and their parents for the crimes of getting a higher education. Beyond its harm to families, this debt is having a ripple effect throughout the economy. According to Bloomberg, home ownership rates among 18 to 35-year-olds with student loans dropped 24% in the decade ending in 2019. And it says here, since 1979, California State University tuition and fees have risen 1,360%, while the University of California tuition and fees have climbed 555%. That is outrageous. So, folks, my advice is to go to a community college and get your undergrad, and then transfer into a 4-year. And unfortunately, 4 years don't necessarily respect 2-year college educations at the same level. So you might transfer in below junior and have to do some makeup classes. It all depends on which school you go to. But anyway. And there's much more of this article over at commondreams.org. Again, you may not agree with everything that they write in an article, but do filter through it and let it challenge your preconceived notions about the topic. Be open to conversation about it. We're all on the same planet together. This next article, suspects in dramatic Lupine robbery arrested by police near Paris. If you've never seen the Netflix show Lupine, it says the suspected robbers of the Netflix shoot Lupine were arrested by police on March 9th near Paris, just under 2 weeks after the dramatic heist, according to local reports. Part 3 of Lupine was shooting on the outskirts of Paris in Nanterre, I guess, with Omar Sy, when approximately 20 people who hid their faces, did something. So let's click this article. It's an article over at Variety, and it's written by Elsa Kesslessy. Suspects in dramatic Lupine robbery arrested by police near Paris. If you've never seen this show, go and check it out. It's a lot of fun. It says part 3 of Lupine was shooting on the outskirts of Paris when approximately 20 people who had their faces covered, broke onto the set after throwing mortar fireworks on February 25th. An estimated 300,000 euros or 333,000 US dollars worth of equipment was stolen. 20 people. 7 people, most of them under the age of 18, were placed under formal investigation for armed robbery and fencing committed as part of an organized gang on March 11th. The Nanterre, I guess, Nanterre prosecutor told French radio outlet RTL. And Netflix confirmed the news to Variety. So, again, go over and read the rest of this, and then go and watch Lupine. It is a fun watch. I'm glad season 3 is coming. So the next article is in the Daily News Show. I am not even going to delete this. Republicans don't want to talk about the real culprit of inflation, corporate greed. America has been transformed into a monopoly nation. Just a warning, this goes over to commondreams.org. And again, I don't necessarily agree with everything that is said in their article. And I've said this repeatedly simply because some of the way that it's written, some of the headlines kind of are accusationary, is that even a word? Accusory. They basically blame this or that like a line delineated in the sand. And while some may not want to accept this one way or the other, there is a gamut. There is a range. There is a spectrum of people that fall on the line that are willing to talk about this concept that corporate greed is the cause of inflation. But inflation doesn't just come from some weird entity on another planet that's dictating the path of the social experiment on Earth. We are in charge of this, human beings. Somebody has to raise the price for somebody else have to pay a raised price, and so on and so on and so on until you have inflation. It doesn't just come out of thin air. There has to be a cause of it. And blaming one thing or another doesn't really get to the heart of it. You have to find what it is and find out why it went up, who raised it, what was the purpose of raising it. But that's not what happens. What happens is fingers get pointed. Sure, there's a lot of Republicans that don't want to talk about corporate greed, but I guarantee you there are also Democrats. And in your country, wherever you might be from, it's the same there. The problem is the people. If you don't have a person that wants to be a member of society and they just want to take from it, they aren't a member of society. Society needs to say something about it, needs to do something about it, needs to discourage that type of mindset. But there are people out there that embrace that. They think that it's great. Anyway, this article is over at Common Dreams. Republicans don't want to talk about the real culprit of inflation, corporate greed, and that America has been transformed into a monopoly nation. And this is written by Jim Hightower. And when you go through this article, you will undoubtedly find a whole bunch of information about how corporate behavior is all about profit, is all about this idea that generating revenue is the only outcome for a business, and that's not really what it should be. The whole quote about acquiring wealth, I just forgot the person's name. He regretted saying that. He said that he wished that it had never been said because it became a mantra for business. And it's true. Of course, a person is going to sit there and say, wait, my entire existence in business is about making money, but you don't really believe it. So you're saying that my existence in business isn't about just making money? I don't think I really like that idea, because I'm making a lot of money and it allows me to do whatever the hell I want to. Well, you can't always make more money. You can't always make more ever-increasing profits within a business. It's just not possible. You reach an upper limit unless you add something more to it to exploit a different market, or add another service, or something else gets added to it. But then you end up with inflation if you increase the raw materials. It's a slippery slope, this discussion, and we're going to end up all convoluted and tied in a knot, because it takes quite a bit of like a mystery board where the police are trying to figure the whodunit. And you're going to have a whole bunch of needles or pins in the board and thread connecting everything, and eventually it becomes a black hole and sucks the planet into it. At any rate, the article goes into some great detail. It says, following the ricocheting pinball of the GOP's logic, number one, they say that helping hard-hit families induces them to refuse to go to work. No, that's not how it works. Yeah, some people will try and take advantage of the services. Other people want to work. They want to be on their own. They don't want to be under anybody's thumb. Anyway, you'll have to go and read this, because I'm going to end up running really late. So go over to Common Dreams, read that article, and you'll find out more about it. So let me paste it into the chat. There you go. Okay, and so the last article is in the continuity report, and it says here, Keith Olbermann isn't returning to MSNBC. He wants you to know why. And here it goes, Keith Olbermann must be the worst person in the world this week to anyone who works for MSNBC or NBC News. The longtime sports and news personality spent Thursday afternoon in an epic 21-post Twitter rant telling of a convoluted effort to return to MSNBC, where he once served as the linchpin. So this article is over on Variety, written by Brian Steinberg. Has a picture. Maybe it's a blurry picture. Maybe it's been softened. I'm not sure what's going on with it. But it says, over the course of 11 years in emails and comments sent between an array of senior NBC Universal executives that run the gamut from former NBCU News Group Chief and former NBC News Chairman to current NBCU CEO Jeff Shell. Olbermann alleges he was kept on tenterhooks. I don't even know what a tenterhook is. About the return to the cable network where he once enjoyed one of his most successful career stints. You will have to go and read this entire article. But it says, Olbermann's tale has been passed around all week, surfacing first in an account in the Daily Beast and then in some more detail in a report in Puck. Olbermann says the Beast report is more accurate. So go over to the Daily Beast. Obviously, you can click the link here. Let me do this. Click that link in the chat. And then again, I've said it like 15 times today, I guess. Click the link in the description on the website or the podcast or on YouTube. Anyway, it says, after his most current contract ended, clipping a years-long tenure with NBC Universal and leaving the cable network without a designated anchor to come in and handle coverage of big news events, no matter when they arise. Rachel Maddow is cutting back on her primetime appearances as she's looking to fulfill a new pact with NBC Universal. Craig Melvin is leaving his late morning weekday program at the end of the month to focus on his today duties. So I guess they're looking for somebody. If you're interested, I guess you can go and knock on MSNBC's doors and say, hey, I'm available. But I get, wow, this article is quite long. So you'll have to go over and check it out. Yeah, I don't really see anything that really stands out about this. I'm sure that there's, it says, with remarks that became so pointed that it took peace talks between Fox's Rupert Murdoch and General Electric's Jeffrey Immelt to cool the temperature. Olbermann became a controversial figure, tilting against Fox News Channel's Bill O'Reilly with remarks. Yeah, it's always been like that, though. It seems like society really likes watching a train wreck, and if it's in slow motion and it takes a decade, all the better. I mean, it's basically real life soap opera. If people did fact checking, then things would be different. If news wasn't, what I tell you is reporting what other people are writing about, because it's happening in the world and there's so many people that are talking about it. I personally needed it narrowed down to what amounts to in the order of a couple hundred news sources. Not all of them are always active. I've said this before. But we have information overload. And so you really do want, as a person, to kind of whittle it down. Otherwise, you just don't know really what to include in your consumption of news. You can flip through it. And that's why TikTok is such a big deal, because it's little snippets. It's not long rants. It's not a bunch of text. It's just little files. It's the news blip. And sometimes it's funny, and sometimes it's thought-provoking, and sometimes it's a little bit of news, but it's pithy, and it's something that people can latch onto really easy. But these talking heads, man, they're always screaming at each other, and they're always ranting about something, which really is a rant about each other and not really the news. When I watch a lot of stuff from other countries, I watch news from other countries, there isn't this tit for tat. Maybe I'm watching the wrong channels and there is this in other countries. I haven't heard it. I would love for somebody to point me at, maybe it's local channels in other countries, not just the national news that gets presented online, where the antagonistic, argument and tit for tat kind of stuff is taking place. But here, all of the stuff that they consider news isn't news. It's talking heads, similar to me, except that I'm not really expressing my opinion about the person that's reporting it or them versus us. I'm simply giving you my perspective about the news, the information, and maybe add some context from my perspective. Again, not just my perspective, but additional information. And I'm encouraging you to go and read the rest of the article, because I'm giving you a little snippet of it, really just a little snippet to tease you into going over to the site and checking it out and raising awareness about the topics. You may not have heard that Keith Olbermann was trying to return to MSNBC, or care for that matter. But what I do want you to care about, nice transition, right, Marawatt? Is ohmTown.com and ohmTown here on Twitch. So when we're done here, go over, sign up at ohmTown.com, and you'll be able to get the news from the site 24 hours a day, 7 days a week. You can sign up for various channels and you'll get news from those channels. You can just click on the little link here once you're on the site, and you can choose which ones you actually want news from. The front page always has general news, everything. And every time you click on ohmTown.com, unless I've broken something right before the show started, which is possible, I might break something, it will refresh with the latest hits of news from, I think, around the world. And with that, that's the end of the show. And I really appreciate you coming by. And I will see you tomorrow, 6 p.m. Eastern. And maybe soon we won't have a time change ever again. But I guess you never really know. See you tomorrow. Bye-bye.